Shalom, 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 brothers and sisters. Shalom, shalom, shalom. This is your brother Kazak Yah, and want to bid you all blessed Shabbat for those of you that are tuning in on the Shabbat. For those of you that are viewing this lesson a little later on, we pray that you had a blessed Shabbat. I want to do a teaching or on the subject of rightly dividing the word. Now, this morning when I did my regular routines in the morning and happened to be on Facebook, and I noticed that I had made a post about remembering the Shabbat, and then a post came in different directions, and I say it that way, from different people, and it appeared as though that they read my post, and it seems like it was a counteraction to what I had posted, because people don't want to acknowledge the soundness of scripture. In a lot of cases, these people that are doing that are actually preachers, that they are defenders of the faith of Christianity. Now, those of you that know me know I'm not a Christian. And at the same time, I'm not here to beat up Christians, but I'm here to address some things that primary teachings that are promulgated in Christendom, that many times people don't want to adhere to the word that they carry in their purse, on their person, in their personal bags, or just loosely carried in their hand. So I want to open up with a biblical text, and let's go to I think it's 1 Timothy, where Shaul admonishes the people that have become converts to do. Okay? 2 Timothy chapter 2 and 15. Now, just from a way of a history, who is Timothy? Who's Timothy? And my Isha is here present, so she can feel free if she want to jump in and say something. But the question is, who is Timothy? Because Shaul, who the world calls Paul, had a convert by the name of Timothy, and so here we find this particular statement. But before let's do it like this. Let's read that, and I'm gonna go where I was thinking to go. Okay, so we're gonna read this one verse, and it reads as follows: "Study to show yourself approved unto Yah." Now, King James has God in there. Okay, for those of you that know me, and please don't be offended by this, we don't do God, Lord Jesus, and Christ and all of that. Not in this circle. There are other Hebraic circles where they have no problem using those bastardized substitutions. We don't do that here. Okay? So he says, study to show yourself approved unto Yah, a workman that need not to be ashamed. He says, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, rightly. So now what I want to point out is that Shaul wasn't talking to, contrary to popular opinion, he wasn't talking to every believer that has a Bible. Am I safe to say that? He was addressing that to Timothy. So what was Timothy's position? Right? Timothy was, and we're gonna read it so you can understand who Timothy is, because we don't just speak in this particular ministry that Yah gave me. We let the the scriptures and the biblical text speak for themselves. Okay, so now let's go over to 2 Timothy chapter 4. So we're going to go forward, right? 2 Timothy chapter 4, and we're going to read verse 1 and verse 2. Okay? Now, this is Shaul, because Timothy is a letter that was written by Shaul. Okay? He says to him in 2 Timothy 4:1, I charge thee therefore before Yah and the Master Yahshua, the Messiah, right? That's a whole nother lesson there. See, even Shaul acknowledges that is a difference between Yah, the Father, and Yahshua, the Messiah. They're not one and the same, okay? That's a whole nother lesson. I want to get off on teaching that. But Jesus is not, in Christendom, Jesus is not the same as the Creator. Okay? It's not one. Okay? And that's where we see that here. So he says, preach the word, be instant in season. I'm sorry, let me back up. He said, I charge you therefore before Yah and the Master Yahshua the Messiah, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. Preach, that's another lesson right there. I mean, I'm such an expository teacher that sometimes I read stuff that's not even on the subject matter, but you can't help but see that. But he says that the Messiah will judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. So nobody's up in heaven. Just see with that. Can you see that right there? Just with that, nobody's in heaven. If the Messiah is going to judge, and this lesson is called rightly dividing the word, okay, of truth, right? Now, we haven't gotten to what the word truth is yet, okay? But so Shaul says that the Messiah who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. So the dead's not up in heaven. And contrary to popular teaching, the dead's not in hell. You know, many people believe that if a person's not in heaven, they in hell. When they die, they go straight to hell. They're not in hell. And they're not in heaven. But he says that he's going to judge them, the quick and the dead, at his appearing and his kingdom. So when does the judgment take place? As we go into the kingdom age, or the 1,000-year period. Okay, now continue. He says, preach the word, right? Preach the word. Now, what word do you think he's preaching? Is he preaching the letters of Shaul? By this time, nobody was carrying around the New Testament anyway. So when he says to preach the word, what do you think he's talking about when he says to preach the word? What is he talking about? Okay. He says, preach the word and be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. Okay. Now let's continue. He says, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. So now let's pause for a minute. What word do you think he was commissioned to preach? And as we just disclosed, he was not teaching the New Testament, because nobody was walking around with a New Testament Bible like you see some people today. Get rid of the Old Testament, have a New Testament Bible, walking around and go to church with the New Testament. The Old Testament, we don't read no more because we're not in the Old Testament no more. We just got New Testament now. They wasn't walking the streets of Jerusalem with the New Testament, right? So now, so he said for him to preach the word. right? So now let's understand that nobody was walking around with a Bible like this. Okay? Because when they made specific reference to the word, they was talking about the scrolls that they carried, scribes. How do you know that? Let's go to Luke chapter 4, okay? We're going to come back to 2 Timothy 4 in a minute. But let's go to Luke chapter 4. Okay? Now we're going to go down to Luke chapter 4, verse 16. Okay? Luke chapter 4, verse 16, it reads as follows. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, right? He went into the synagogue on the Shabbat and stood up for to read. So the Messiah kept the Shabbat, or the seventh day. He went into the synagogue on the Shabbat and stood up to do what? To read. Okay? So what did he read? We're going to find out. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. Now, in the King James Standard Version, what does it say there? Verse 17, what does that say there in yours?
And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah.
It says book. What version is that you're reading from? Is that the Standard King James? Give me the Standard King James. Okay.
And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he opened the book, he found the place where it was written. So basically the same thing.
Okay, the book of the prophet. Okay. For some reason, I thought it said scroll. But that might be in a different version where it said scroll. But at that particular point in history, it was not, the scriptures was not in the book form like this. It was in scrolls. And so as he opened up the scroll, let's go back to verse 17. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Yoshiyahu, or Isaiah, okay, which it was a scroll, okay, and it's somewhere in the pages where they made reference that it was a scroll. That's what I'm trying to point out, but I'm not going to let that slow me down, because we'll find it later if need be, okay. But for the sake of argument, we'll just use book. But we know factually that nobody had books back then. They had scrolls. They wrote them, and they rolled them up in a scroll. The scroll, okay? Now, and he said, and when he had opened the book, he had found the place where it is written. So the point is, Yahshua read from the scroll. Now, who had privilege to the scroll? It wasn't the common people. It was the scribes that had the scrolls, scrolls. And let me just do this right quick, okay? Because it's bothering me. All right. If I change back to the King James Version, I can find it, right? Okay. Let's do it this way. Okay. This is where we get it. Okay. All right. If we take that same word, what verse was that? 17? Okay. If we take that same word and we look at it from the Greek text, since we have embraced that it was originally in Greek, and we know different than that, but the common populace of people believes that it was originally in Greek. But he says here, it was delivered unto him the book, and the word is biblion in Greek. Okay. Biblion in Greek, it says a diminutive of a roll. Okay. So that's Strong's 976. So if we go to 9, it's reference to 975. But if we go to 976, it gives us the word biblos, the inner bark of a papyrus plant, that is a sheet or a scroll of writing. So now, for those of you that say, well, brother, you didn't prove that it was a scroll, not a book. We just proved it to you right there in the original Greek. Now, we'll do the same thing, and then I'll go forward because I don't want to spend time on this. But we are dissecting the word book so that we can understand or understand what they actually had. So now we want to get back to, so we can understand what the word of truth is, right? So right now we're building our case, okay? Okay, now for book in the Deuteronomy 28. Let's do Deuteronomy 28. We got so many we can use. Let's use Deuteronomy 28 and 58. Deuteronomy 28, 58. And reason on this wise. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book. See that? The word for book is the word Sifra or Sifa or Sifra, however you want to pronounce it, okay? And that is, it says, a writing, the art of a document, by implication, a book, right? And it gives reference to 5608. So let's look at 56, Strong's Concordance 5608 for book. And is the word sifar or safar. It says a prime root properly to score with a mark as a tally or record. That is by implication to inscribe and also to enumerate intensively, to recount, that is to celebrate, commune. Right? Okay. So the scribes wrote the book, which was the Sefer, and they saved it by, let's see if I can do this here. The word for scroll let's go to Isaiah 34 and 4. This is the one time we see the word scroll. And the word scroll itself is actually only found in the Tanakh, or what the world calls the Old Testament. It's only found in there one time. So that's the word for scroll is the same word sefer, which is a writing, a document, by implication, a book. Okay. So the book wasn't a book like this, but a book was a scroll, as in what? The Dead Sea Scrolls. Most of you are familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Okay. So now, having done that, this is just kind of like setting, laying the foundation. So now let's get into the meat of this, okay? So now let's go back to Second Timothy 4. Was it 4? Yeah. 2 Timothy 4. So he says, preach the word. Preach the word. So Shaul admonished to Timothy to preach the word, right? Not to preach the New Testament, right? Not to preach the letters of Paul, Acts, First and Second Corinthians, Colossians, Galatians, Ephesians, Thessalonians, Timothy, Jude, James, Jacob, Hebrews. He didn't say, when he said preach the word, he wasn't talking about the New Testament. Now I know that kind of strikes you wrong in the heart of your heart. But the reality is that whenever they made reference to the word of Yah, they were talking about the writings of the prophets and the Psalms, right? That is what they call the word of Yah. And more specifically, when you talk about the word of Yah, you are talking about his Torah or his law. We make reference to preach the word, right? Okay. So now we have that understanding. We understand that you cannot indoctrinate people with the teachings of Paul. And I'm not saying I don't believe in him as a prophet. What I'm saying is the teachings of Paul is not the word of Yah. The teachings of Paul, and we read them and we take them for what they're worth. The teachings of Peter, Shimon, Kepha, the teachings of Jude, the teachings of who else I leave out? Jacob, Yochanan, James, John. Those are not the word of Yah. They're inspired writings, but they're not the word of Yah. So whenever Shaul was telling anybody to preach the word, he's not talking about what he's saying, his letters. Okay? So everything that Shaul says, you got to go back into the word of Yah, which is what? The Tanakh, which is what? The word of truth. Right? To understand how to rightly divide the word of truth. Okay? Now, I could go 1,000 different ways with this lesson, but I want to kind of try to make it simplistic because right now, I know I lost you, right? I mean, for those that are not really knowledgeable about what the scriptures and what the word is, okay? So now, the scriptures and the word are one and the same. The scriptures and the word are one and the same. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you something so you can understand, understand the scriptures, all right? Now, I know some of you are probably saying, "Hey, brother, are you non-Messianic? You don't believe in the New Testament?" Well, if you got that out of what I just shared, because I just explained to you a truth of a matter, that I don't believe in the New Testament, or I don't believe in the brief Kadash, then you have misinterpreted or misrepresented what I'm sharing, okay? What we're trying to get down to is what is the word of truth, okay? So now, I'm gonna give it to you this way. Shaul is what? What nationality is he? He's an Israelite, right? Okay, Shimon Kefa. What nationality is he? He's an Israelite, right? Who else? Yaakov. What nationality is he? He's an Israelite, right? So all of those writers that the Most High gave the ability to write an inspirational text were Israelites. So the Israelites had a responsibility, right, to the oracles of Yah, right? Man, but let's do this here. Okay, hold that thought there. Let's do this here. Let's go to Romans right quick. Romans 3. And then we'll go to Hebrews 5. Then we'll go to Peter 4. Okay, so let's start with, let's start with Acts 7. Acts 7. Let's go to Acts 7 and 38 first, right? And then we'll go to Romans 3 and 2. Then we'll go to Hebrews 5 and 12. And then we'll go to First Kepha, or First Peter 4 and 11. Okay? And is that all I want? Okay, yes. Okay, so let's start with Acts 7:38. Okay, Acts 7:38. All right. Okay. You know what? This is gonna slow me down. You got it. Can you read it nice and loud so we can hear you on the video?
This is he that was in the ecclesia in the wilderness, with the angel which spake to him in the Mount Sinai, and with our fathers who received the lively oracles to give unto us.
Okay, that's good. So the fathers, which will be what? Israelites, right? So the Most High gave to the Israelites the lively oracles. And what was their responsibility? To give it to us, right? So their responsibility was they were to give the word. Now I'm giving you something that I know y'all like. The Rhema word, right? That's a Greek word. I know y'all like that. And what's the other word? One's Rhema. What's the other Greek one? Rhema and the written. What's that word they use for written word in the Greek? It'll come back to me. But Rhema is the spoken word directly from the Most High that before it is written down. Okay, so before they had scrolls, right? The Most High spoke, and he used the mouthpiece, the prophets. First prophet he used. Well, I won't say first because there were other prophets before Moshe, but you don't know about that. But that's another lesson. But Moshe, was used as a prophet, right? So whenever the nation of Israel wanted to hear from the Most High, what did they do? They used the prophet the Most High spoke through the prophet to give instruction and direction. Okay, I got my grandkids over here. So the oracle was, we see people try to use themselves today as an oracle, but the oracle, we don't need oracles today. Okay? Oracles was the people that the Most High spoke to, because he didn't speak to everybody. He spoke to the prophets, and the prophet communicated what the Most High said, and then at a particular time in history, they began writing down what the Most High said through the mouth of the prophet or the oracle, right? So that's explaining to you right here in 738 that on the Mount Sinai, the Most High, he said, and with our fathers who received the lively oracles to give to us. Now, our fathers was not only just simply Moshe, right? But it was also the whole nation, which would be considered our fathers, okay? How do we know that? Quite simple. Let's go to Exodus chapter 19, real quick. Very popular. This is Hebrew Israelite 101, right? Hebrew Israelite 101 in Exodus, or Shemot, chapter 19. And let's see, verse 2 says, in the third month, verse 1, this 19 and 1. You want to read it? Read down Exodus 19, verse 1 down through 6.
In the third month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. And Moshe went up unto Yah, and Yah called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thou shalt say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all the people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel.
See that? So now the Most High did what? He used Moshe as the oracle to do what? To pronounce the calling for the nation, originally the whole nation of Yasharal, to be the oracle. First with Moshe, and secondly with the nation. Now we know the nation rejected that, because in the 20th chapter, the next chapter, they said, look, don't speak to us. Speak to Moshe, we'll hear him. So from that point forward, the prophets